Hi there, welcome. My name is Kevin Marshall, and I'm with IDC, International Dentist Central, of course. And I focus a lot on the application end of things here, as well as the interviewing side of things. And just to give you an idea of what we'll be doing, we'll be discussing our topic today, which is all about the competition of application cycle, and the competition of your candidacy in general. So overall, we're ending the current year's application cycle for the most part, and in general, there are exceptions to that. But overall, the California schools are finishing up. I think they just finished up interviews this past weekend for the most part. You have a couple interviews going on today. I think San Antonio's one. And in this week, the next week, things are really wrapping up in terms of a lot of schools and their interviews. And then decisions will be made. Announcements will be sent out, and invitations will be sent out. And so it's both a nerve-wracking time for folks, because those who went to an interview already, performed in a bench test and all that stuff, are now, the clock's just started to just begin waiting and hoping for the best, hoping that you did everything you should have done and could have done on your interview and on your bench test. And for others, if you weren't invited to an interview, you might be scratching your head and thinking like, oh, okay, well, what could I have done to get an interview? What should I have done to get an interview? What was wrong? Since we began International Dentist Central years ago, at that time, it was relatively straightforward. We had a pretty good idea of what makes a solid candidate versus what's a weaker candidate. And the threshold was not so high. It was not so high as it is today. And so this is a reality that this industry obviously is facing, this pool of candidates every year. It's going to get harder and harder for everybody in it and everyone involved in it. That's mostly hard on candidates. It also, it's also difficult for us to kind of each year try to see how much more challenging, how much more competitive things are. Why is this happening? I mean, just to give you a quick kind of snapshot, when Dr. Alyssa Marshall got into an advanced dental program back in the 2007-8 era, I think. That was a time where it doesn't seem that long ago, but that was actually a time where it was much simpler to get in. She came with no dental experience in her home country, no associate dental experience. I don't think if she were to apply today with that, should be as simple for her to get in. She had a little bit of research experience, but not tons. Nothing majorly formal. I don't know if she even had any of that, to be honest, now that I think about it. She may have had some mark of it on her CV. Her SOP was probably solid, but it probably wasn't extraordinary even by today's standards. I'm not trying to say that she wasn't an extraordinary candidate. She really was. But in terms of what she had to present, she probably was able to present things in a more simpler way, and it would have been fine back then. And a lot of candidates, it was like that. So you could back then kind of get away with putting forth a relatively straightforward SOP, as long as it was pretty clear and solid. You could have, she I think really excelled in her as a practitioner. So she had a lot of she went to a really good dental school, and she had an incredible hand skills and dexterity, and her knowledge base was awesome. So, there's reasons why it was, why she was so successful in getting in. And at the same time, when we look at other things, things have changed. The landscape has changed, and what may have gotten the candidate in back then without too much trouble is now becoming a much more challenging thing. So, stuff to consider and to take in and decide, where are you at as as a candidate. I assume that if you're watching this right now, you are either at a point where you've had a few interviews this year. Maybe they didn't go. Maybe they didn't lead to an acceptance. Maybe they led to a wait list. Maybe they didn't even lead to that. You may have had basically no interview invitations, or you may be brand new, ready to start this next upcoming cycle, and you're just kind of getting familiar with things as they're coming. So if you fall into those categories, you're welcome, and we're happy to have you. If you are joining us and you have had an acceptance, well, that's great. You can just relax and enjoy yourself, and hopefully that'll be you guys in a few weeks. I mean, I'm assuming there are people here who are still waiting. So I think this will be helpful, though, in general, for the most part and for most of you. What we're going to do is talk really quickly. Again, if you haven't heard us before, International Dentist Central, we do help people with all different aspects of their process, from the application process, by assisting you with your documents and improving as much as we can help you. The way you're portrayed when you begin submitting applications as a candidate. We assist with LORs, letters of recommendation, statements of purpose, CVs. Then we have a team of professional editors, all native English-speaking editors that really, their expertise is English and language and writing, so they're really great at assisting you and getting you to that place you need to go with that. And then we also, obviously you probably may have heard of us in terms of the bench test preparation. We do a lot of bench test preparation, as well as interview preparation. And so it's interesting to note that, we're just here helping folks with the process as best we can. Some people ask, like, do we guarantee an acceptance? Do we guarantee interviews? We don't, and it's unfortunate, but we do the best we can, in the sense that, like, every candidate is different, and we can only do so much. We can't go there and take your test for you. We can't go there and do your interview for you. I'd love to say we could, but it wouldn't work. And we also can only take a candidate so far on paper. And so a lot of candidates, depending on if they can come to us with amazing credentials and amazing experience, and we can definitely help them. And a lot of times it's a breeze for them to get in. And then we do our best with other candidates who come to us and they have very little experience and a lot of maybe problems or inconsistencies in their application. And we do our best to kind of work with those folks and bring them up to speed and present the best version of them that we can. But there's only so much. There's a limitation, right? There's a range in which we can work and help, and then beyond that, it's up to the candidate. So we're really here as more guides, consultants, and we hope people kind of view us that way and work with us in that sense. So I'm gonna switch to my presentation slides real quick here, and we can kind of go through what we plan to talk about today. So as I switch to here, let me just change my, let's do an outline view. Okay, let's see if you can see this. Hopefully everyone can see that. Great. So this is called The Pressure's On. And what we wanted to talk and highlight today is, the competition is heating up in this process. And what can you do about it? The importance of preparing a strong application. So right now we're talking at this point about most likely early next year. There are some schools that are still accepting applications, obviously, and that will continue to do so throughout, the next few months. And so if that's your interest as well, that's great. Happy to have you. But thinking about a time frame of early next year, let's look at what is the picture of what is an average candidate in 2017. And I'll say this, that if I were to show you a slide like this in 2012, it might be a much different slide. If I were to show you a slide like this in 2008, it'd be a very different slide. These numbers have gone up for the most part, and some of them appeared which didn't appear before. It's still adding some extra weight to your CV. And then we look at being a professor or an instructor or teaching dentistry in your home country or elsewhere. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be your home country. It could be anywhere. There are even dentists who are visiting dentists in the United States who are, they're visiting professors, I should say. They're not legally able to practice dentistry in the United States, but they're teaching dentistry in the United States. And so, yeah, if you're teaching anywhere, teaching other dentists how to do dentistry, that's a really big thing. We don't see too many of those candidates. So that makes you an above average candidate. That means, they're going to look at you differently. And when you say things like, oh, my interest one day is to become a professor or a professor in the United States, you'll be taken seriously with that because you already have proved it. Someone's already given you that job. And so if you're wondering, like, if you're not in the US right now, this is what I'm hoping that people, I do hope that there's a certain number of people who are watching these that have not arrived and settled in the United States yet, because there's so much that you can do before you get here. If you have an interest in being a dentist in the United States, you're researching this right now, and you're like, well, I really want to get over there as quickly as I can. I have no dental experience, or I have like 6 months of dental experience here after dental school. And but I really am antsy to get over to the United States. Like, please think about it before you come. Make sure that you are an above average candidate before you get here if you can. That might mean that you have to stay another year or two, but why not take advantage of that? Because the difference, it's so much harder once you get here if you have no experience in your home country as a dentist. It's so hard to make up for that once you get here. You think you're getting this advantage by being in the US, but actually you're giving up a lot of advantages that you could be working on if you're patient. It's like this impatience factor that I see. People rush over here, and I get it. It's like, I want to get going. I don't want to, I want to get on with my life and in my career. So I understand the desire for that, but it's at the cost of moving over here and then wasting year after year and making, as we mentioned a lot in our workshops, once you begin the application process, you need to finish that. You need to get in as quickly as you can and as few of cycles as you can. You don't want to be going into your third, fourth, fifth cycle of this process because you made mistakes at the beginning. Because by that time, it becomes so much more difficult to get acceptances because the schools already look at you. When you come in at that fourth year cycle, and you've been through this cycle 3 times before, 3 years before, the schools already look at you a certain way, and they really want to see if you've done anything. They're only going to look at you if you've done something significant. But if you're just reapplying with the same same CV every year and the same basic qualifications and the same basic experience, they're not going to look at you anymore. They're like, okay, you've submitted this practically the same CV and the same experience for 3 years in a row. What's different this year? Nothing. So you want to make sure if you're thinking about coming to the US and you haven't made that decision yet and you're trying to figure out when, make sure that you have something on this list, on this slide, ticked off, or a few things, you know. And I'm not talking just GPA. Do you have a few years of dental experience in your home country? Are you at the 2-year mark? Because if you are, stay another year. Stay another year or two and get that at least 3 to 5 years. Have you considered teaching? You know, there's dental schools in either your home country or in countries that are nearby with, you know, similar languages that you can speak that are brand new, or they're just starting, that, you know, they might need someone like you, and maybe it'd be worth it to do that for a year or two. Yes, it could cost money, it could cost time, it could throw your plans out of the way, but my Lord, when you come to the US, you'll be in this position to be able to get in much quicker, and not waste year after year this frustrating situation that I think a lot of people go through here. And then formal research experience. These help too. You know, if you don't have any research experience in your dental school, or if you have the type of research from your dental school that it was very, let's say, topical, it was, you know, maybe like a survey that you walked around and did a survey of 100 fellow students or held up 100 community members. That is not considered heavyweight research experience. You know, so if you have something heavyweight, if you have a formal research experience in your home country where you were doing some published or eventually published research, maybe on materials, maybe on treatment efficacy, and actually working with clinicians or laboratories to kind of create new materials, whatever, something very complex, much more in depth, and you were working with, you know, a team on this, that's a different story. That says a lot there. That's strong. But if it's just the standard, like, okay, we have to expose you to research in your dental curriculum, so, you know, go take a survey, that's not what they're looking for so much. I mean, that's nice, but everyone has that. It doesn't make you unique. And so one thing you can do if you're in the US, in this situation where you're trying to add something to your CV, you're trying to add something to your portfolio, and you don't have too much else going on, you have limited dental experience in your home country, you can find a US-based dental school doing formal research. Not easy to find, not easy to get into, but once you can get it, once you get in, and that means a lot of hustling, a lot of reaching out to people, a lot of reaching out and saying, I'll do whatever you need me to do. Maybe showing up at the school and trying to track people down to get in, to volunteer in an experience like this. If you can do this for 6 months or more, then now we're starting to look at an above average candidate. And when you say in your interview or your SOP, I'm interested in doing research one day, they will take you more seriously. And finally, Master's in Public Health. This also can go a long way. And so people do come to us and ask, well, should I do a Master's in Public Health? You know, it's certainly can be really a game changer for people who have very little else to offer. You know, again, limited dental experience, limited or zero dental experience in their home country, no specialties, not a hygienist, not a professor, never taught dentistry before, no formal research experience. Maybe they're a dental assistant for a few years, but that's it. And they have a GPA that's a bit on the lower end or average end. Now a master's can help. But again, a lot of people get very upset, like, oh, I don't want to wait 2 years. I want to do this now. And I offer the rebuttal, yeah, but what if the next 2 years you applied and didn't get anywhere because there was nothing for them to take, because there was nothing for them to look at and be impressed by? 2 years is a steal. You know, that 2 years is going to go by either way. Do you want the 2 years to be you on your third or fourth application cycle, or do you want the 2 years to be you on your first application cycle with something to offer and they're impressed? So be careful of ruling out these things that require work, they require time, they require inconvenience. I've talked to folks that refuse to even look for a research experience, a research project to volunteer with, because they're not located in an area in the US where there's any dental schools doing research. And so they won't do it. Well, I don't want to move. I don't want to move to the East Coast. I don't want to move to California. Or I'm already in the East Coast and there's only one dental school where I'm living and they don't have a research going on, so I don't want to move. I'm not going to move another few hours away. Yeah, it's tough. I get it. It's not easy, especially if your family has reasons for being. If you're in your hometown or your town in the U.S. because of family, maybe your spouse has a job there, maybe your family moved there. There's good reasons. We all have good reasons why it's not convenient. You have family to take care of. I get all these reasons. I get that there's good reasons. And you're ultimately the one who has to decide whether those are good reasons or not. Because it doesn't matter to me, and it doesn't matter to the schools ultimately. They want to see what they want to see. They want to see you've done more than just show up and turn an application that's very average. So for you, I ask, as we look at how do you stack up, you have to decide whether these reasons that you refuse or that you're unwilling to take dramatic action as a candidate and do something dramatic and difficult and time-consuming and expensive, you have to ask, is the reason that I refuse to go, let's say, apply for a research opportunity on the other side of the country or 5 hours away from where I live and move there for this opportunity, are my reasons of not, I don't want to move, I don't like that town, or I don't like that area, I have other obligations, I have a job as a dental assistant here, my spouse doesn't want me to, are those reasons good enough for me to risk not getting into school? Because if I did that, the chances of me getting more invitations to interview would go up. And the chances of me getting into that school, so long as I did well on my bench test and interview, the chances of me getting accepted and beginning my career as a dentist in the US would go up greatly. But I refuse to do that thing because it's uncomfortable, difficult, time-consuming. You know what? At the end of the day, you are the one that has to decide that. No one else is going to care. No one cares. And I hate to be so dramatic right now, but I want to say this. It's important to say that really, ultimately, no one cares about you except for yourself. And I believe that for me. I don't believe anyone cares about me except for myself. People will say they do. People will care to a certain extent. So I'm not trying to say that the world's a cynical place. There's a lot of caring people in this world. There's a lot of people that want to see you succeed. But ultimately, you are the only one who's going to do the extra work, who's going to do the uncomfortable things, who's going to make the sacrifices for you to succeed. No one else is going to make those sacrifices for you. Maybe your parents will, but they may be the only people if they are. And your parents can only do so much for you. But no one's going to take a chance on you because they just like your, they like your smile or something. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So really, where do you stand up? How do you stack up? And so I want you to think about those things. We've really gone into that, and so hopefully that's helpful. What else can you do if you're, like I say, if I'm in a situation where I'm in the U.S., I'm not living up to those above average qualities. I don't have many of them. Again, U.S. research experience, internships. And you can, there's various ways to get these, but it will require some hustle, as I said. A lot of emailing, a lot of research on the school to see what they're up to. You may have to do some reverse engineering. You may have to see what projects they have going on. You may have to look at various databases of research projects going on out there by the U.S. government. Look up the names of the head doctors who are leading those research experiments. Find their email address through the school directory, send them an email, and have that email proofread to make sure it comes across both polite, passionate, interested, all that stuff. You may need you may need some help on that. You can't just say, hey, I want to work for you. You may have to be very polite, very, very humble, but also very strong. You may need to even go down to the school and talk to people and say, talk to students in the courtyard and say, I need leads, who should I talk to about research? They may be able to tell you what office to go to, then you can go to the office, or they may be able to tell you what, residents to talk to who are doing research. Find out any way you can, figure out what you can do. It's not always about just having a friend or not. If you don't happen to have a friend who's a professor or a friend of the family who's a professor doing research as a big institution, that doesn't mean it's the end for you. You can do more. What else can you do? A U.S. preceptorship is a possibility. Didn't really talk about that, but that's another possibility. And I put in here with hands-on patient experience. There's not many preceptorships in the U.S. that do this, so I want you to be aware of that. So having a preceptorship can help. It can be another option to help push you above if you're an average candidate. And that being said, there's a lot of bad preceptorship programs out there that are really just, you're just showing up for classes or whatever, or you're just kind of showing up in the clinicians or the clinical setting, and you're not really doing any practicing, you're not treating any patients, you're just observing a lot, and they take your money. So you got to be careful and make sure it's a rigorous one as much as you can. And review all the preceptorship programs out there and try to find which ones are the most rigorous, the most difficult, even if they're the most expensive. And we often talk about the one from UCLA, which is, if it's still going as far as I know, it's one of the few out there that have you have the ability to practice on patients, which is a big plus, because you can talk about that. It's a U.S. dental experience there. And then what else? More experience in your home country. This is one no one likes to hear whenever I suggest it. But the few people that I've seen that have done it have had success with this. So people, maybe they even apply for a year, they don't get anywhere, they don't get invitations. We talk to them, they're like, oh, you're coming across very average. I'm not shocked to see you didn't get enough invitations. And then again, well, I have the option to go home, back to my home country for a year or two. I'm going to go home, I'm going to work as a dentist there, I'm going to build up that experience, and then I'm going to come back. And when I do, there's a different story to be told. So some definite things to think about. So I hope this helps give you an idea of what makes an average candidate, what does that look like in 2016, 2017, and even beyond. I mean, these are things that are going to be higher and require more and more as years go by. Application necessities. Once you decide where you are at, what are some things that you need to think about in terms of your application? One is to apply early. The earlier you apply, usually the better. There are probably cases where, circumstances, just all the factors just kind of contribute, and maybe, you apply late and it just happens to be that right time for the school that they've just processed a batch of applications, and maybe you're now the first one on the top of the new pile. Great, that can happen. I'm not trying to say that doesn't ever happen. But in general, rule of thumb, apply early. If you happen to know that a particular school, it's better to apply late, okay, fine. I'm not trying to say there's no black, it's not black or white. You might know some inside information about a particular school where that's best to do, either to apply in the middle of the application opening or near the end. You hear that that's a better way to do it, great. You're welcome to try that and go for it. In general, applying early is a better way. It makes you look more prepared, and also has an opportunity to have your application be looked at a time when not many others are coming in, and so it's going to stand out a little more. Strategize early. This is the time to be thinking about this. So those of you who are here today, I really commend you, because you're here early, way early. You're just thinking about this now. Choose a theme for your candidacy. This is important. What is your theme? What's your story as a candidate? Is it that you're a researcher? Is it that you're a professor? What are you? What makes you unique as a candidate? We'll talk about that in upcoming workshops, but I'm just kind of throwing these out there. And then finally, get help. Get feedback from professionals of various types about how you appear to them. Talk to dentists even. Talk to dentists that you either work for right now or observing. Get feedback. Show them your documents. And definitely get help when you get into the application cycle. Hopefully you have an idea now. Hopefully you've gotten a picture of what a good candidate looks like, what a strong above average candidate looks like versus what an average candidate looks like. And also I hope that once you know where you lie, where in that spectrum are you, now that you're honest about that, you can now figure out what next steps to take to build that up, to add more to your portfolio, add more to your experience, your CV, so that you can move from an average candidate to an above average candidate. That's where we want to get people.